There is a sentence a police officer says to people in this country every single day that is not a refusal, is not a threat, and does not sound remotely like either of those things. It arrives as a kindness. It is said in a friendly voice, usually with a bit of a sigh in it, by somebody who at that moment appears to be entirely on your side, and it goes something like this. You don't need a solicitor for this one. Honestly, it'll only keep you here longer. And it works. It works constantly, and it works best of all on decent people who have never been in any trouble in their lives, because it is aimed squarely at the one thing they want more than anything else in that moment, which is simply to go home. Not to win anything, not to argue with anybody, to be back in their own kitchen by tea time with the whole thing behind them. So they say yes. They say it is fine, they do not need anybody, let's just get this over with. And in the next hour they talk themselves into a position that a solicitor would have kept them out of in about 90 seconds. Now here is the part that almost nobody watching this knows, and it is the reason I have made this video rather than another one. That sentence is not merely bad advice. It is a sentence he is not permitted to say to you, and where it is written down is a document you can open on your phone tonight. I am going to do this in a particular order. First, the 4 answers people actually give, and why every single one of them fails. Then the words that work, built one piece at a time, then what he says when you use them, and at the end, the paragraph. Quick word on who is talking to you. I am Oliver Bennett. I am not a police officer, I have never worked for a force, and I am not selling you a way out of anything. I am a criminal defense solicitor who reads the codes so you do not have to. 15 years of it. And the single most common thing I have heard across all of that time, from people sitting opposite me after the fact, is a version of the same sentence. He said I did not need one. He seemed to be trying to help me. I did not want to make it into a big thing. 2 things before we start, because both of them are England and Wales. Scotland is a separate legal system with its own rules on this, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. If you are watching from Scotland, the principle holds but the detail does not, and you should check it locally. To understand why that sentence exists, you have to look at the thing from where he is standing, and it is not sinister, it is ordinary. He has a job, and the job is to establish what happened and to gather evidence about it. Now, evidence is expensive. Forensics take weeks. Witnesses have to be found and they contradict each other. Footage has to be requested, and half the time it has been written over. All of it is slow, and most of it is uncertain. There is one exception, and it is sitting in front of him. What you say costs him nothing. It takes an hour, it is recorded, and it never has to be found because you are handing it to him. Your own account of your own day is by an enormous margin the cheapest evidence in the building. And there is exactly one thing that reliably interrupts that. Not shouting, not refusing, not being clever. A qualified person sitting next to you who knows what the questions are for and who will stop you answering the ones that hurt you. So look at the sentence again with that in mind. You don't need a solicitor for this. He is not making a legal assessment of your situation. He is describing the one obstacle between him and an hour of free evidence, and he is telling you it is unnecessary. Right, the 4 answers, and I want to go through these in the order that people actually reach for them in real life, rather than in the order a lawyer would put them in, because the reason this whole thing works as reliably as it does is that every single instinct you have in that moment turns out to be the wrong one. Number 1, and it is comfortably the most common sentence in this entire subject, and I have heard it from more genuinely innocent people than I could begin to count. I have not done anything wrong, so I have got nothing to hide. I understand completely why people say it. It is not stupidity. It is a decent person signaling that they are decent, in a situation where they feel they are being treated as though they are not. It is almost a protest. But look at what it actually does. It is not a legal position, and it does not protect anything. What it is, in practice, is consent. You have just agreed to answer whatever comes next, with no representation, on the strength of your own assessment that nothing you say could hurt you. And that assessment is the problem, because you do not know what the investigation is about. You know what you did. You do not know what he is looking for, what somebody else has already said, or which of the 20 ordinary facts about your Tuesday happens to matter. Innocence tells you what happened. It does not tell you which parts of what happened are significant, and the whole difficulty is that those 2 things are completely different questions. Number 2. Slightly better, still fails. And it fails for a reason that is almost cruel. Do I need a solicitor? Should I get somebody? Do you think I need one for this? There is nothing wrong with any of those sentences as English. The problem is that they are questions, and a question has to be answered by somebody, and the only person in the conversation is the one person in the room with a reason to say no. You have handed the decision to him, and he will answer it pleasantly, and he will answer it the same way he answered it yesterday. Up to you, but it is straightforward, this one. I would not bother personally. We would be here half the night. None of that is a legal opinion, and none of it is advice. It is a preference, delivered in the voice of somebody who does this daily to somebody who has never done it at all. And because you asked, it feels like an answer. The fix is not a better question. The fix is that this is not a question at all. It is a decision you have already made before you open your mouth, and it comes out as a statement. Number 3, and this is the one where British law differs sharply from what people have picked up off American television, so I want to be careful, and I want to be blunt. Number 3 is deciding to say nothing whatsoever. No comment to everything. Sit there, arms folded, wait it out. And on American television that is the clever move, because there it is nearly cost-free. Here it is not. Listen to the caution, which is read to you, and which most people have heard 100 times without ever once listening to the middle sentence. But it may harm your defense if you do not mention, when questioned, something which you later rely on in court. That is Section 34 of the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act, 1994, and it means silence in this country carries a price that silence in America does not. If you sit in silence, and then months later in a courtroom you give an explanation, the prosecution may invite the jury to ask why you did not say so at the time. Not proof of anything, but a question hanging over your account, put there by your own strategy. So silence is a real option, and sometimes it is the right one, but it is a tactical decision with a cost attached, and it is precisely the kind of decision that requires somebody qualified to weigh it, which is the opposite of a reason not to have one. And I want to say the obvious thing plainly, because this is the beat where people misremember me. I am not telling you to talk. I am telling you that the choice between talking and not talking is not one to make alone in a corridor with a stranger waiting. Number 4 is the saddest one, because these people did everything right and then lost it in the corridor. You ask for a solicitor. Properly, clearly, the way I'm going to describe in a minute. He says, no problem at all, we will sort that out. And then, while you are waiting, somebody makes conversation. The football, the weather, traffic on the way in. How long have you lived round here? It is not an interview. Nobody has cautioned you, there is no tape running, and there is no solicitor in the building, because you are the one who asked to wait for one. It is a human being filling an awkward silence in a corridor, and it would feel actively rude not to answer them. So you answer. Of course you do. You are a normal person and somebody has asked you a pleasant question, and you have spent your entire life answering pleasant questions. Here is what the code of practice does with the things you say in those few minutes. Capable of being used in evidence, not confessions, not admissions, anything capable of being used. And paragraph 11.4 says that at the start of your interview, the interviewer must put any significant statement made before the interview back to you and ask you to confirm or deny it, which tells you exactly what those minutes are worth. They are not a gap in the process before the real thing starts. They are part of the record, and they are happening at the one moment when you have deliberately arranged to have no representation. You do not have to be rude about it, and I am not asking you to sit there ignoring a human being. You can be perfectly pleasant and say nothing about anything. The weather is fine. Where you were on Tuesday is not. So all 4 fail. Not because people are foolish, because every one of those 4 is what a reasonable, innocent, cooperative person would naturally do. So here are the words. It is one sentence, it comes in 3 pieces, and I'm going to build it in front of you a piece at a time so that you remember why each piece is in there. A sentence you understand survives pressure. A sentence you have merely memorized does not. Piece 1. I am not answering any questions. Not, I would rather not. Not, I do not think I should. Not, can we wait a bit. Every one of those is an invitation to a discussion. And he is enormously better at that discussion than you are, because he has had it 400 times and you have never had it once. So it is a statement about what is going to happen in the present tense, and it does not ask anybody's permission, and it does not leave a door open for somebody to reason you out of it. You are not proposing something, you are describing the situation. Piece 2. Until I have spoken to a solicitor. That is the condition, and putting it in matters far more than it looks like it does. Without it, you are somebody refusing to cooperate, and refusing to cooperate is a posture that invites a fight. With it, you are not refusing anything at all. You are saying yes. You are saying yes under the conditions that the law already provides for you and that he already knows about. That is a completely different conversation, and it is a much harder one for anybody to push back against because there is nothing in it to argue with. And piece 3, which is the piece almost everybody leaves out, and which shuts down the entire conversation we are about to come to in the next beat before it has started. I want the duty solicitor. Naming it does something very specific. It removes at a stroke every practical objection he might otherwise reach for. That you have not got anybody, that you would not know who to ring at this hour, that yours will be shut, that it is going to cost you money you have not got. All of that is answered in 5 words before it is ever raised, and it is answered by you rather than by him, which changes who is running the next few minutes. Put the 3 pieces together, and this is the whole thing. It is shorter than most people expect it to be. It takes about 4 seconds to say, and there is not a single word in it that anybody could call rude. And then the 5th rule, which is not part of the sentence but matters more than any of it. Having said that, say nothing else. Not one more thing. The sentence only works if the silence after it is real. Now, if you use that, something will be said back to you. Not always, but often, and there are about 4 of them. They are the same 4 everywhere, and they are worth recognizing before you hear them for the first time. The first is the delay. It will be hours. Duty is not on until the morning. We could have you out of here by 9 if we just crack on now. The second is the implication. Fair enough. Only guilty people usually want one. Never said outright, always available to be heard, and it is designed to land on somebody who is frightened of looking like the sort of person who needs a solicitor. The third is the friendliness withdrawn. It goes cooler. The chatting stops. Suddenly this is a formal process with a person who was being nice to you 2 minutes ago, and the change is the message. And the fourth is the offer. Look, if you help us out now, I will make sure that gets mentioned. That one I want you to be especially careful with, because a police officer does not make charging decisions and cannot bind anybody who does. You do not have to answer any of it, and you certainly do not have to argue with it. You have a sentence, you say the sentence again in exactly the same words, and then you stop. Repetition is not rudeness, it is the whole technique. Everything on this channel comes down to a paragraph somebody can point at, which is exactly what the handbook is. Make them pay is 40 pages of the sections, the code paragraphs and the words to use, written out with the references printed beside them, in type large enough to read on a phone at a custody desk. It is norightsuk.gumroad.com/l/make_them_pay. That is the code on the screen now and the link at the top of the description. It is the same material as this channel with the sources on it, so you can hand somebody a page instead of a memory of a video. Now the paragraph, and this is the part I have been holding back since the first minute. Everything a police officer does in England and Wales, from the moment he has got somebody in front of him, is governed by the codes of practice made under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. They are not internal guidance, and they are not a training manual. They are public documents, they are free, and Code C is the one that covers detention and questioning. You can have it open on your phone in about 30 seconds, and I would encourage you to, because I am about to read you 2 short passages out of it, and I would much rather you checked me than took my word for any of it. Paragraph 6.4 says this. Read the middle of that again. Do or say anything with the intention of dissuading. Not refuse, not prevent, dissuade, talk you out of it. And then look at the clause on the end, because that clause is the one that matters most to most of you, whether or not they have been arrested. This is not a rule about the custody desk. It reaches the doorstep and the roadside and the conversation in the car park, and it covers people who are not under arrest at all. But the code goes a good deal further than that, and this next bit is the one I genuinely think ought to be better known than it is, because it is not a general principle about being fair. There is a note attached to that paragraph, and what that note does is name one specific sentence and forbid it, note 6ZA. And the sentence it prohibits is telling somebody that the whole thing might be over quicker if they do not ask for legal advice. Here it is, in the code's own words. That is the sentence. That is the exact sentence we opened this video with. A solicitor will only keep you here longer. The most effective thing anybody says to talk a person out of legal advice in this country is named in the police officer's own code of practice, and it is prohibited. So when you hear it, you now know two things at once. You know it is not advice about your case, and you know that the person saying it has, in that sentence, told you rather a lot about what the next hour is for. There is one more thing, and this one is not in a code of practice at all. A code can be breached, and the breach argued about afterwards. This one is in the statute itself, which is a different order of thing entirely, and it is the strongest single argument in this video. I told you earlier that silence carries a price in this country under Section 34, and it does, and I am not going to soften that. But read on in the same section, past the part everybody quotes, to subsection 2A, do not apply. Not reduced, not weakened, not something to be argued about later by two barristers. The adverse inference power is switched off entirely if you were not allowed an opportunity to consult a solicitor before you were questioned, which turns the whole thing around. Asking for a solicitor is not a favour you are requesting, and it is not an inconvenience you are causing. It is the step that determines whether the biggest risk of staying quiet can be used against you at all. And it is the reason the sentence has to include the condition, until I have spoken to a solicitor. That is not politeness. That is the words that put you inside subsection 2A instead of outside it. One more situation, because a great many of you will meet this one rather than the custody desk, and it is where the trick is most effective of all. The voluntary interview. Nobody arrests you. You are invited in for a chat at a time that suits you, or somebody sits down with you at your own kitchen table. And because there has been no arrest and nobody has put anybody in the back of a van, the whole thing feels informal, which is precisely and exactly why people go into it on their own. I have seen more damage done in those than in any custody suite, because the person walks in relaxed. The code deals with that directly, and it does it in one short sentence: not diminished. The same rights, the same free legal advice, the same protections. And the code requires the interviewer to explain that free, independent advice is available, to ask whether you want it, and if you do, to arrange it before the interview and delay the interview until you have had it. And two things you should know about that room. You are not under arrest, which means you may leave at will unless you are arrested. And the same prohibition about saying it would all be quicker without a solicitor is repeated word for voluntary interviews. So the informality is real in one sense and completely false in another. You can genuinely walk out of there, which you cannot do from a custody suite. But nothing about your protections has shrunk, and nothing about what you say in that room counts for less. Now, the thing I want to make certain lands properly before you go, because everything I have said for the last quarter of an hour depends on it, and a great many people in this country have it completely wrong. The duty solicitor is free. Not cheap, not means-tested, not something you apply for or qualify for or pay back afterwards. There is one available at every police station in England and Wales at any hour, and Code C requires that you are told that free independent legal advice is available. I want that separated completely from anything else I have said tonight, because it is not a lesser option and it is not a fallback. Duty solicitors do this all day, every day. They know the officers, they know the process, and this is the work rather than an interruption to it. There is no version of the next hour that is improved by not having one. None. I have been doing this for 15 years, and I have never once sat down with somebody afterwards who told me they wished they had gone in on their own. Right, let me put the whole thing in one place because there has been a fair amount in this one, and it arrived in 4 separate pieces before the answer did. 5 things, and the 5th is the only one that is a skill rather than a fact. The other 4 you now simply know. Staying quiet after you have said your piece is the part that takes actual nerve, because the silence will feel rude and it will feel long, and it is neither. And the sentence itself, one last time, because it is the only thing on that whole list you have to carry around in your head. I am not answering any questions until I have spoken to a solicitor. I want the duty solicitor. And then stop talking. Every word tonight came off a government page with the address on the screen beside it, the codes of practice on gov.uk and the Act itself on legislation.gov.uk. Not my summary of them. They're pages, and paragraph 6.4 takes about a minute to find, and the usual at the end where it belongs. I am a criminal defence solicitor, but I am not your solicitor. Nothing in this video is legal advice about your situation, and it cannot be because I do not know what happened. This is England and Wales. Scotland is its own system. If you know somebody who would say yes out of politeness, and you do, everybody does, it is usually the most decent person you know, send them this one. Not for the sentence, for the paragraph, and the fact that the friendly line is one he is not allowed to use. I am Oliver Bennett. Read the code, not the room.